It started with bubbles. Thousands of them. At first, I thought the sun was playing tricks on me. But no. My entire pool was foaming over like someone had set off a bubble bath bomb the size of a car. Thick, white suds spilled over the edges, creeping onto the deck and swallowing the patio chairs. The water jets were still running, churning the mess into an endless sea of foam. For a split second, I just stared. Did I accidentally mix the wrong chemicals? Did my pool suddenly decide to become a washing machine? Or worse, was this some bizarre science experiment gone wrong? Then I noticed something strange. The bubbles weren't just floating aimlessly. They had a trail, a sudsy path leading straight toward my fence, disappearing into my neighbor's yard. That's when it hit me. Oh no, I ran inside and pulled up the security footage. There she was, Karen, in all her glory. The self-appointed queen of the HOA, my personal suburban nightmare. And right there, under the glow of my backyard lights, she was hunched over my pool, dumping an entire box of industrial-strength detergent into the water like some kind of mad scientist. The way she did it, too. Calm, deliberate, like she was performing some noble act of justice. I could feel my pulse in my ears. This wasn't just an annoying prank. It was war. Karen and I had been at odds for a long time. She wasn't just a neighbor. She was a one-woman dictatorship, ruling over the HOA like it was her personal kingdom. The problem? My house wasn't even part of the HOA. That small detail didn't seem to matter to her. She acted like the entire neighborhood was under her control, including me. And since I refused to play by her ridiculous rules, she made it her mission to make my life miserable. First, it was my patio furniture, the wrong shade of brown. Apparently, there was an official HOA-approved color palette, and mine didn't make the cut. Next, my mailbox, not up to community standards. Never mind that it was perfectly functional. It wasn't the exact model the HOA had chosen, so I got another complaint. Then there was my lawn. Too natural. I didn't drown it in chemicals to make it look like a golf course, so according to Karen, I was bringing down the property value. It was ridiculous. Every few weeks, another notice, another fine, another reason why Karen just couldn't stand me. But no matter how many times she tried to pull me into her web of nonsense, I ignored her. She had no actual power over me, and that drove her insane. But this was different. Harassing me over minor things was one thing. Ruining my pool was personal. She wasn't just being annoying anymore. She went out of her way to vandalize my property. This wasn't about rules. This wasn't about maintaining the neighborhood. This was revenge. Just as I was plotting Karen's downfall in my head, my doorbell rang. Matt. My best friend, expert in bad but somehow brilliant ideas, and the only person who could make me laugh when I was ready to commit a crime. The second he stepped inside and saw my backyard, he doubled over laughing. "Dude, did you install a hot tub overnight and forget to invite me?" He could barely get the words out between wheezes. I didn't even crack a smile. Instead, I shoved my phone in his face, playing the security footage. The second he saw Karen on screen, standing over my pool like some kind of soap-wielding villain, his laughter cut off. He let out a low whistle. Oh, she's really outdone herself this time. I nodded. I'm about 5 seconds away from turning her yard into a swamp. Matt stroked his chin, pretending to think. Tempting, but let's go bigger. I frowned. Bigger? His grin spread. HOA meeting is today, right? That was all it took. In an instant, my plans shifted. Sure, I could retaliate in private, dump something nasty in her yard, make her suffer in silence, but where was the fun in that? If I really wanted to make this count, I had to hit her where it hurt. Karen thrived on control. She loved standing in front of that meeting room, lecturing everyone like she was some kind of suburban queen. She made the rules. She decided who was in the right and who was in the wrong. But this time, she was the one who broke the rules. So, we had a new plan: public humiliation. Right in front of her loyal followers, in the one place where she always had the upper hand. She thought she could get away with this because no one could stop her. That was her first mistake. The HOA meeting was held at the community center, a beige, soulless room that perfectly matched the people trapped inside it. Rows of uncomfortable folding chairs, a long table at the front, and a giant sign reminding everyone to respect HOA authority. It was basically Karen's throne room, and tonight she was in rare form. She stood at the front, practically glowing with self-importance, rattling off a list of new rules: stricter trash can placement, harsher penalties for unapproved holiday decorations, a new policy requiring all front doors to be a uniform shade of beige. Karen thrived on fear. She had the entire room under her thumb, and she knew it. Then she glanced in my direction and smirked. "Some people," she said, eyes locked on me, "seem to think they're above the rules, that they can live in our neighborhood without respecting our community standards." I let the silence stretch just long enough for the tension to settle. Then I stood up, phone in hand. "Would you say dumping detergent into someone's pool is a violation?" The room shifted. People straightened in their seats. Murmurs started. A few smirks appeared. Quiet, subtle, but there. Karen's face barely changed. She tilted her head, all fake innocence. "I was just maintaining neighborhood cleanliness. You should be thanking me." "Oh, she was good." I tapped my phone screen. Security footage, clear as day, showing Karen pouring an entire box of detergent into my pool like some kind of suburban supervillain. For the briefest second, I saw it. Panic. A flicker of it in her eyes before she shoved it down and plastered on her usual smugness. She let out a fake laugh. "Maybe your pool just needed a redesign." Matt, sitting beside me, whispered under his breath, "She's good. Evil, but good." I crossed my arms. "Raise your hand if you think Karen is full of it." The room erupted. People chuckled. Someone in the back actually clapped. Karen's jaw clenched, but she refused to look at me. She tried to brush past it, move the meeting along, pretend nothing happened. That's when Matt leaned in again, voice low but dangerous. "You know, if you drain that pool, all that soap has to go somewhere. And just like that, the real plan was born. The plan was simple, silent, efficient, untraceable." By midnight, Matt and I were crouched by the pool, armed with a hose and a thirst for justice. The night was quiet, only the distant hum of crickets and the occasional porch light flickering in the distance. Karen's house sat dark and lifeless, its perfectly manicured lawn glistening under the streetlights. It was time. The mechanics were solid. The pool needed draining anyway. Too much soap, too much of a bubbly nightmare to deal with. If I drained it onto my own lawn, I'd be left with a swamp of foam and regret. But if that same soapy flood just so happened to roll downhill onto Karen's award-winning flower beds, well, that felt like the universe balancing itself out. Matt uncoiled the hose, dragging it toward her yard. He worked fast, setting it up so the water would flow slow and steady. Not some dramatic flood, just a quiet, creeping wave of sudsy doom. I hesitated. "You sure this won't backfire?" Matt grinned. "Dude, this is art." The first trickle began. It was barely noticeable. Just a gentle stream making its way toward her pristine flower beds, the ones she spent every waking moment perfecting. The ones that won neighborhood beautification awards every year, because Karen didn't just plant flowers, she curated them like some kind of suburban Michelangelo. I swallowed down a laugh. She's gonna lose her mind. Matt nodded solemnly. And we will be here to witness it. We sat back in my lawn chairs, watching the water slowly, steadily seep toward her yard. It was the perfect crime. Silent, patient. Karen was asleep, dreaming of new ways to fine people for existing incorrectly. By the time she woke up, her beloved garden would be a foam-covered disaster. We clinked our sodas together, and then we waited. The morning started with a scream. Not just any scream, Karen's scream. A high-pitched, rage-fueled shriek that cut through the quiet suburb like a siren of doom. I peeked through my blinds and nearly lost it. Her lawn was a disaster. Foam everywhere. The once perfectly trimmed grass was drowning in suds, bubbles creeping onto the sidewalks, spilling into the street. Her precious flower beds? Gone. Swallowed by an avalanche of soap. It looked like a winter wonderland, but in the worst possible way. And the best part? The neighborhood kids had already claimed it. They were running through the foam, laughing, throwing handfuls of bubbles at each other. Some had even dragged out boogie boards, riding across the soapy mess like it was some kind of amusement park attraction. A few parents were standing around, half laughing, half pretending to be concerned. And then there was Karen. She stood in the middle of her driveway, barefoot in a robe, her hair still in curlers, absolutely seething. Just as I was wiping away tears from laughing too hard, Matt burst through my front door, breathless. Dude, he doubled over, trying to catch his breath. It's worse than we thought. I pointed toward the window. Oh, I've seen. Right on cue, Karen spun around and locked eyes with me. I swear I felt my soul leave my body. She stormed over, foam squishing under her slippers. You! She jabbed a finger at my chest. This is your doing. I blinked. Karen, I just drained my pool. Where the water went after that? Well, gravity is a tricky thing. Her face turned redder than her destroyed roses. I'm calling the HOA, the city, and the police. I crossed my arms. Go ahead. Matt, standing beside me, whispered under his breath. She's gonna explode. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. The city inspector pulled up in a dusty white truck, looking like he wanted nothing more than to go home. He stepped out, clipboard in hand, eyeing the foamy disaster like it was just another Tuesday. Karen, of course, was ready. This is an attack, she shrieked, marching toward him. He did this on purpose. My lawn, my flowers, ruined. The inspector barely blinked. Draining pool water isn't illegal. Karen's mouth snapped shut so fast I thought she might bite her tongue. For the first time ever, she had nothing to say. Then Matt, because of course it had to be Matt, cleared his throat. Actually, since you're here, we found something interesting. I turned to look at him, and the grin on his face was dangerous. He pulled up something on his phone, waving it around like a winning lottery ticket. Did you know Karen's been illegally siphoning city water for years? The crowd, which had gathered to watch the soap opera unfold, went dead silent. Even the inspector raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? Matt, never one to waste a dramatic moment, zoomed in on the screen. Records, complaints, usage reports. She's been flagged for suspiciously high water consumption for a long time. Karen floundered. That's ridiculous. Really? Matt scrolled down. Because this says your house was flagged before for a hidden illegal connection. That wasn't fixed. And guess what? The city never got the payment for those fines either. Karen sputtered. It wasn't me. My late husband must have... Inspector. The first report was from 3 years ago. Karen. Then, the previous homeowner. Inspector. You've lived here for 10 years. Karen's face turned an impressive shade of purple. By now the crowd was eating this up, whispering, muttering, exchanging looks of pure joy. Then, from the back, Mr. Thompson, our oldest neighbor, chuckled. Looks like the HOA queen isn't so squeaky clean. That was it. That was the final blow. Karen snapped. I built this neighborhood, someone in the HOA crowd murmured. Should we vote her out? Matt leaned over, grinning ear to ear. Now that's a plot twist. It didn't take long. By the end of the week, the HOA board had a meeting without Karen. The vote? Unanimous. Karen was officially stripped of her power. No more fines, no more rules, no more self-proclaimed suburban dictatorship. The city, after looking into Matt's little discovery, hit her with thousands in unpaid water fees. Possible criminal charges were still on the table. And her once perfect lawn? A foamy, soggy wasteland. By the time the suds finally disappeared, the damage was done. The grass was dead. The flower beds? Ruined. The award-winning bushes she loved to brag about? Brown and shriveled like her personality. That's where she sat now, on her porch. Silent. No screaming, no threats, just staring out at the wreckage of her empire, the HOA queen, without a kingdom. Meanwhile, Matt and I kicked back on my porch, a couple of beers in hand, watching the sunset over the greatest suburban takedown of all time. I raised my bottle. To karma. Matt clinked his against mine. And to the best pool revenge in history. Across the street, Karen slowly turned her head, glaring at the world like it had personally betrayed her. I took another sip, smirking. Ah, tastes like victory.